John Deere, owner of Adorable Ideas. One question that I get asked quite frequently is which is my favorite type of stabilizer? Now for general use, my all-time favorite is a product called no-show mesh. And it does come in two different variations, no-show mesh and no-show mesh fusible. Now it also comes in three different flavors. We have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And you'll want to make sure that you use the black on dark colored fabrics. You'll use the white on light colored fabrics, and you'd use the beige on sheer white fabrics. That way it matches most people's flesh tones, and you don't see any stabilizer marks or shadows underneath. Now the main reason why this is my favorite stabilizer is because it's incredibly thin and soft. It's a very sheer stabilizer. It's actually a 1.5 ounce stabilizer, and if I actually look through this stabilizer, I can see shadows and outlines of what I'm actually looking at. So that's what makes it incredibly soft. You're not adding a lot of bulk to the actual fabric of the garment. Now the other reason why is if you look really closely, there's actually a heat press grid. It looks like treads almost, where it goes in opposite directions, and that's what gives it incredible strength in both directions, and it really does do the job better than any other stabilizer that I've seen on the market. Now the no-show mesh fusible has all of the same attributes, but it also has been treated with a powdered adhesive, and you can always tell if it's the fusible no-show mesh because one side will look a little matted and dull, and the side that actually has the adhesive on it will look very shiny. And you always want to make sure that when you're putting the fusible onto the garment, you make sure that the shiny side always goes face down onto the fabric that you're going to fuse it onto. Now the reason why you'd want to use a fusible stabilizer is sometimes you're dealing with fabrics that are actually stretchy or very sheer and thin, or could be slippery, which means that when you have one side of the hoop touching the stabilizer, it'll actually grab on to this side of the hoop. But you have to remember that the fabric is always touching the other side of the stabilizer, and if it is a sheer, thin, stretchy, or a slippery fabric, that's when you end up getting a lot of puckering in your designs, because your stabilizer is holding firm, but your material is actually moving. So you want to make sure that you cut a piece of stabilizer that will cover the entire size of the hoop. And you want to make sure that you end up putting the shiny side down onto the fabric, and you'll make sure that with a iron on high heat, and preferably with no steam, you're going to adhere that to the actual fabric so that you're basically creating almost like invisible underlay. You're making sure that the stabilizer and the material are going to be fused together, and you're not going to have any movement between the material and the stabilizer. That will ensure that you're going to have great results every time you embroider. Now that you have your stabilizer fused to the material, you can see that they're literally sandwiched together. There's going to be absolutely no movement between the stabilizer and the material. Now this will work especially well if you're doing quilting, if you're dealing with sheer materials, silk duplione, if you're dealing with t-shirts or sweatshirts, golf shirt material, anything that's milled or has a stretch to it, or that's slippery or thin in nature. And you're going to hoop these two pieces together so that your stabilizer and your material are both secured within that hoop. After you've run the embroidery design, you can actually take it out of the hoop, and you can at that point peel away the stabilizer close to the embroidery and then cut around the object so that you aren't going to have a lot of excess stabilizer that's going to be around the embroidery itself. So it is a temporary adhesive. It will stick well during the process, during the hooping process, but when you go to clean up your design afterwards, it does actually peel away and you can trim your stabilizer accordingly.